Om Shanti. I think the topic I was given today was the subject of overcoming loneliness. And I think it's a very relevant topic at this time. So many people around the world being isolated, separated from loved ones, and actually starting to face the reality that what do I do with myself? How do I relate with myself? Do I love myself enough to be with myself comfortably, to enjoy my own company at this time? And I think, for me, very much over the years, I've understood that loneliness is an attitude. It's a mind, it's being fed by a particular mindset. And sometimes the mindset is nobody understands me. Now, of course, when you say that nobody understands me, it often is code word to mean I don't understand myself. But typically speaking, you're feeding a particular mindset inside. And so you may even be in a relationship, you may have company, you may be amongst people, but you'll feel like a lonely island, disconnected. And so loneliness doesn't mean that you have to be on your own. It just means that you're feeding a mindset, and because of that mindset, you can't connect and relate to others and receive love from others. Be open, be vulnerable, be trusting in a relationship with others. So, and I was thinking, what else, what other mindsets am I feeding that makes me lonely? And sometimes there can be a mindset that's of subtle ego. You're feeding a mindset of being something or someone, putting yourself above somebody or a situation. And so you can never let yourself be yourself and relate naturally to people, because you feel you have to put on you have to stay in a particular position, put on a mask to be able to relate. Now, why would you need to put on a mask? Only if you're feeding a particular mindset here of having to sustain an identity that isn't you. That's when you can start to feel isolated inside. And so what are the masks? I'm going to invite you to think about this a little bit. What are the masks that you are feeding in your life? And sometimes the whole subject of loneliness, it also happens when we stop learning. I think that all of us carry a certain level of our life experience and lessons inside us. But there is so much more to learn. And to stay open to the drama of life, to stay open to God, requires a lot of quiet attention and effort. Otherwise, we end up recycling our past. We recycle our own perspectives, our own viewpoints, and of course we believe we're right. And there is nothing more than, you will become a lonely island if you feel you're right. Because that automatically will polarize you from somebody else. And the moment you feel you are right, there will always have to be somebody else that is wrong. And so it's interesting how that mindset of feeling right, it could be a mindset of justice, subtle justice, needing justice. And this can keep a very quiet anger burning inside. And it's that anger sometimes that doesn't let us reach out and take love from people or give love. Because when we get angry out of a sense of justice, then I think we want to punish. We want to take revenge. And all of this makes us feel somebody else is my enemy. When in reality, nobody is your enemy. It's what you're doing here with yourself that's making you your own enemy, and as a result, projecting it on someone else. So, on a spiritual journey, I've always had to pay a lot of attention on this whole subject, that is there anything coming into my perspective that is making me feel and see another as an enemy? Because then there's something wrong here. Whoever someone is, whatever they are, it's their packaging. And they are expressing from their packaging. Right? So it's not my rubbish, it's theirs. And yet, what is it that makes me start to see them as an enemy? It's a subtle thing, making someone an enemy, because you immediately create distance. So we really need to challenge our mindsets and perceptions and just question the beliefs we hold about others or ourselves that are still separating us or giving us a feeling of separation from people and ourselves. There isn't this feeling of coming home to the self or belonging to the self. It's almost like, sometimes when we live alone, especially, what do you do with yourself all day? What do you do with yourself? You have to get very, very creative. You have to then turn inwards. You have to make an assessment. Okay, what am I doing? What did I want to do? What can I learn? It's like you suddenly have to create a timetable for yourself. You are your own baby. So how well are you looking after your baby? So, I feel that this subject of loneliness really brings us to being alone, but enjoying my company. And not only that, enjoying a conversation with God. Yeah. Sometimes when people feel lonely, they also get bored. Yeah, you get bored, and what do you do? And you know what boredom is? Boredom has its roots in subtle anger. It has its roots in this feeling of knowing everything. Okay? And so something inside me has stopped learning. And so a big part of suddenly opening up is to actually let yourself be a child again. And, have a very powerful conversation with the universe and with God. I'm remembering Daddy Janki a lot, because Daddy Janki was the administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris. She sadly passed away in March, aged 104. And she was my mentor and a very, very good friend. This is what I mean. Here was somebody who was, 55 years older than me. And yet she had this ability to make you feel equal to her, to make you feel you belong to her. She never made me feel I was younger than her. She spoke to me with so much respect. And she always used to say, I don't consider myself to be the administrative head. I don't even consider myself to play any role in the institution. I'm a world mother, I'm a friend, I'm a support, and I'm an example. And that's how she defined herself. So the question for you is, how are you defining yourself? Because however you are defining yourself, you are creating your experience of yourself. Some maybe I could be attached to being the role of a mother of so-and-so. I could be attached to the role of being the wife of so-and-so. I could be attached to, coming from a so-and-so family. I could be attached to a job I have. So there are subtle aspects that we still use to define us that are not spiritual. And because of these mindsets or beliefs we carry, there will always be a separation between me and another. The moment I become role conscious, I lose the ability to be soul conscious and to actually feel other souls as brothers. And so a big part of a spiritual journey is shedding, but also from the heart, really developing a sincere, conscientious, and honest conversation with God. I remember Daddy Janki would always say, she was 19 when she first came to the organization way back in 1937. And now she comes to a place where at 94, or 95, she became the administrative head of this movement. And she would always say that my role has never been defined. My part has never been defined by another human. It's always been defined by the conversation I have with God. So she would often say, I wake up in the morning and I say to God, I'm available. I want to be your helper. I'm available. Use me. Now, how many of us say that when we wake up in the morning? When we wake up in the morning, yeah, okay, great. Whereas some of us, most of us, when we wake up in the morning, instead of good morning God and good morning soul, it's good morning mobile phone, right? Mobile phone, good morning. Yeah, good morning Twitter, good morning Facebook. And before you've had a chance to meet yourself and to meet God with so much love, you suddenly plug your intellect into 10 million channels around the world. And so there's never that space for the self. But I think this is such a beautiful thing to do because, science tells us how you utilize the first 10 minutes of your day when you wake up will set the mood for the whole day. It's scientifically proven. So the vibrations, the thoughts you create at the beginning of the day will determine the kind of mood you have the whole day. And the interesting thing about humans is we are moody people. When your mood is upbeat and positive, even a rainy day feels wonderful. But when your mood is down in the dumps, it's very low, and even if the sun is shining, you won't see it. So much of our experience of life is here. Life is going as it should. And it's the question I have to ask myself is, what frequency or level of energy am I cultivating inside myself? Because whatever energy I'm sustaining inside myself is the mood I'll create and will be my subsequent experience of life. You know, people take drugs, people drink, people smoke. Why? To get a temporary high. But what they don't realize is as they drink drugs, drink, smoke, all they're doing is deadening their senses. And in fact, they're reducing their experience of themselves. So if you're numbing your senses and reducing your experience of yourself, how can you achieve your dreams? How can you reach out and connect to people? How can you get close to people? You can't. Because at some point, if you have made the senses addicted to something and they get more and more dull, you just won't have the energy and the strength to sustain a relationship. And so nowadays, you know, you can do online divorces in 5 minutes. Meet someone 2 minutes, next day you don't like them, just divorce them online. It's really easy now. And the reason people just don't have the tolerance to see love through anymore. You know? But the reason is because at some very deep level inside, I'm tired of myself. Why am I tired of myself? I'm fed up with myself, or I feel a sense of loss inside myself. Today we had a very interesting subject on emotions. And one of the things that came up was the fact that every emotion we experience in life, from shame, guilt, blame, all of those are symptoms of fear. The root of it is an experience of loss of some kind. So inside myself, even hurt is a symptom of a loss. Yeah, we try to deal with the hurt, we try to deal with the blame, we try to deal with guilt, but that's like dealing with the branches. The root is eliminating a feeling of loss inside. And you know, to a certain extent, because so many of us have had to go through so many changes in our life, and a change means you have to let go of something. You either let go of it willingly or you're forced to let go of it. And that will have an effect on your body because you'll grieve when you have to let go of something you're used to. And you know, somehow grief and loss have become big comfort zones for people today. People don't want to let go of that grief because it gives meaning. You know, if I didn't, it's like hurt. You know, there's one thing about giving sorrow, but we also take sorrow. And why do I take sorrow? Because I want to take sorrow. Why do I want to take sorrow? It's a question I have to ask myself. What is that sorrow still feeding inside me that I don't want to let go? Is it a victim consciousness? Is it a belief of being unworthy? So yes, let me take more sorrow so that I can continue to stay in the comfort zone of believing I'm unworthy. And then if I keep feeling I'm unworthy, then I don't have to change. I can just live my life in my comfortable way. You know, to truly become happy and joyful, you have to challenge yourself not to take sorrow. And it's interesting that, you know, at the deep end of sorrow, Sorrow is sustained because we still desire something. It's a subtle thing. We might desire union in a relationship. We might desire an achievement. We might desire something from childhood we never had. They're small, small things. But if you want to get to the root of your sorrow, then you have to ask yourself, what do I still want that's still limited? And when I'm sustaining any form of desire inside, I'm not living in the present. I can't see what I have around me, and that's why I can't experience contentment. Yeah, I may have everything around me. I may have the right people, I may have the resources, but I can't see it because I want something else. So at a very deep level, I think spirituality is about dismantling yourself powerfully and deeply remaining in the moment now to trust. I have everything and everyone around me to achieve 100% self-realization. Can I see it? And you know what an interesting, I think an interesting symptom of loss or grief is inside. Sometimes you won't name it like that. You will feel hurt, you'll feel pain, but subtly what loss makes you do is it makes you go back into your past and bargain with your past. How do you bargain with your past? You say, oh, what if this was to happen differently? What would have happened? If only this could have happened differently. This is bargaining. And this bargaining is a form of denial. And so this kind of conversation and bargaining, it doesn't let us live in this moment now. And it doesn't let us see the beauty of what we have and who we are. And I feel that this subject of solitude is very important. Because solitude is so beautiful. I can experience solitude even when I'm in a gathering. Because solitude is a state of mind in which I'm cultivating very kind and friendly thoughts for myself and others. There's a lot of kindness for the self. You know, to understand yourself requires a lot of patience. A lot of patience and kindness. And you can't just leave yourself behind, you know, to do something, to pursue your desires, maybe to have a relationship with somebody. You have to take yourself with you. But to take yourself with you requires a lot of honesty with the self and a lot of deep patience with the self. You know, it's just like a mother would have for a baby. Yeah, she wouldn't just get, okay, yes, it can be taxing sometimes, the baby crying all the time, but the mother wouldn't just throw it away and go, forget it. You know, you'll still get up in the middle of the night to feed the baby. You'll still get up to bring the baby, give it a cuddle. It's the same thing. This is I am my little baby. And you know, sometimes people say, oh, how do you look after yourself? I was like, huh? What a question. How do you look after a baby? When mothers hold a baby, they're holding it and they're cooking and they're cleaning and they're talking and they're doing everything. They have one eye on the baby and one eye on the job. They still do all the housework and they still keep an eye on the baby. Right? Those of you who are mothers, you'll know. So in between, the mother doesn't just drop the baby while she's doing the job and say, oh, I forgot I had a baby in my hand. It's the same. Cultivating a relationship with yourself spiritually means that I have to see the spirit as a little baby. And throughout the day, I have to check in with this little baby. How are you feeling? How are you doing? You okay? I have to give it silence. I have to give it love. I have to give it good food. It's a full-time job to look after yourself. And it's possible. Nobody can make this excuse, I didn't have time, because it's not about time. It's about attention. We have this ability to give attention to something whilst we're doing something else. So we like to use it on everybody else, but we don't use it on ourselves. And so the first thing is, give yourself attention throughout the day. Stop, check in. How am I feeling? And make yourself light. Don't keep yourself heavy, because the moment you experience heaviness of any kind, you get constipated in your head. You'll start to rationalize, you'll start to intellectualize. But keeping yourself light, keeping yourself in a good humor, keeping yourself, it's an art to keep yourself light, but it's very important. And that's what attention does, because wherever attention goes, energy flows. So very important throughout the day, a loving attentiveness towards the self. And if I'm feeling a little bit heavy, quickly do something to make yourself light. And then what's also important is observation. Because to be able to understand yourself and the packaging that you're born in, you might not feel comfortable in your skin right now. Because this packaging has been created out of karma. Karma, I've done everything. Whatever I am right now today is a product of all my choices and decisions. But I have to understand myself deeply. Because on this path of moving upwards, trying to reach my potential, if I don't understand myself, then all my habits will pull me back. And this is where then self-sabotage happens on a spiritual journey. Self-sabotage happens because you just don't understand yourself. You are deceiving yourself about something. There's three things: self-deception, self-sabotage, and then eventually self-destruction. Yeah? We don't want to get to self-destruction. We don't want to do self-sabotage. So we have to stop deceiving ourselves. That's why observing yourself is very, very important. If any of you do not keep an evening journal, I would suggest you start now. You need to write a letter to God every evening, or to yourself, to your higher self. Write a letter and just watch yourself writing this letter to understand yourself. Because when there's real understanding, you will stop blaming yourself. You will stop criticizing yourself. You will stop putting yourself down. And you will start to have compassion for yourself. Compassion comes when there's understanding of yourself. And so observation, as if you're looking at another person, and you start to then laugh at yourself. Take yourself lightly, not too seriously. So writing a journal is very, very important to help you to start to see your expression. And then also some space for silence in the day. because silence helps us to kind of go beyond the traffic of everything we're involved in the day, to come to a place of pure feelings. And we need to cultivate pure feelings inside ourselves. We are feeling beings. We are not thinking beings. We think, and a lot of our thoughts are old habits, mindsets, repeating themselves. But what drives so much of the way we think is the way we feel. And silence has the ability to clean and to ignite pure feelings about ourselves. You know, so when we sit to meditate, how many of us actually sit with a pure thought for ourselves? I am a being of peace. And dive into that thought. I am a pure being. Dive into your purity. Dive into your light. Dive into your truth. Start to appreciate and feel the resources that you have inside. And it's so lovely to have time for yourself to do that. You need time for yourself for that. You know, when you're having a relationship with someone and you don't ever spend time with them, how can you say to them, I love you, but I don't have time for you? It's the same with the self. When we experience stress inside, the reason is we haven't given ourselves time. Daddy Janki would always say this. Yes, all of you serve, but give time to yourself. Otherwise, even you will become dishonest in your service. You know, we have a saying in India, ego uses the name of service to get its job done. Sometimes we take from the actions we do, and then we ended up becoming more drained and burnt out. So the quality of our karma and the impact our actions have on others is so determined by the impact of our own personal vibration. And it just requires a little bit of time in the mornings to set my mood, to build those good feelings about myself, and then the rest of the day goes on automatic pilot. And what's also important is that at the end of the day, we close the day properly. Because so much of what we hold in our short-term memory, when we sleep, it goes into our long-term memory. And anything that goes into our long-term memory eventually starts to define our belief system. So it's very important that before you go to sleep, you've cleared everything out of your conscious mind, uploaded everything, released all responsibility for anything. Because what are you responsible for at the end of the day? You're not responsible for any events around you or any people around you. No. As much as we'd like to think that we are, we're not. We are puppets in a much bigger game. And I always remember what our previous administrative head, Daddy Kumarka, used to say. Somebody asked her the question one time, how do you stay so light? And she said, when I go to bed at night, I give everything to God and I say to myself, this is a play, act 1, scene 1 is over. Tomorrow, scene 2 will begin. And so she just closes it. So when an actor finishes their part, they go home and they go to sleep. They don't take their role with them. And so it's very important to train ourselves in that way, so that when we go to bed at night, there's nothing pulling my conscious mind. And when that happens, then the soul can rest very deeply. Otherwise, what happens, whatever we're holding, the subconscious, what is dreams? You know, people have a lot of dreams. Why do they dream? Because the subconscious is trying to organize all the memories and information of the day. And because the subconscious mind is having to work overtime, what starts to happen is that you dream and then you wake up in the morning and you feel like you haven't slept. Yeah, your energy doesn't feel very good. And then, a depressed person, doesn't matter how much they sleep, it's never enough. So it's really important how we prepare ourselves before going to bed, because that will also determine how we wake up in the morning. If you were to look after these two things just for 1 week, you'll see a big difference in your state of mind. Because when there's an open mind, you belong to everything, everything belongs to you. There's a natural sense of connectedness. I'll give you another example. When a baby arrives into the world, does a baby feel lonely? Have you known any babies that feel lonely when they arrive into the world? No. They might cry a little because they've lost the warmth of the womb for a few minutes. But a baby is born with implicit trust. It knows its mother, it knows it is loved. It is completely born with an energy of trust and faith, and it's completely loved. It has no doubts that it's not loved. Because a baby's never born with doubts. And so much of our learning to retrain ourselves to live a little bit more naturally means to just take off all these big adult labels and masks and opinions and ideas about how something should be, how it shouldn't be, and etc., etc. This is what the stuff of politics. And just become babies, God's little babies. Because then something very beautiful inside the soul, the purity inside the soul will emerge. And when there's purity, there's goodness, and you see goodness. You draw goodness and you draw love because of that. So there's something about us having to strip down to the bare minimum. If we're too complicated here, we will isolate ourselves. We'll build a fortress here. Nobody can get in. And then it's my idea versus your idea. So understanding the self, observing the self, taking some silence for yourself, nourish good feelings inside. In that silence, let yourself become a little baby again. And there's so much freedom in that state. So much freedom. Because a baby is born with complete trust in the universe. It doesn't swallow an encyclopedia or all these A to Z. It doesn't have a master's degree in life, and yet it's the center of everybody's life. It's the center of a family life because of its purity and its naturalness. And so what's the sum total of our life education is to return ourselves back to that state of innocence and purity. It's such a beautiful thing to do because, purity, when you cultivate purity, it brings a natural order in your life. Things, when there's purity, everything orders itself around it, very naturally. That's why babies are often at the center of attention. Because that's the nature of something that's pure. It'll help to purify something. It'll help to bring a naturalness out of everything around you. So if you want your life to become natural, you want your relationships to become natural, then start to become pure inside. But if there's any desires inside or expectations inside, then you'll want to control things with your opinions and ideas in relationships. You know, we often have this slogan in the spiritual university: become a master when sharing your ideas. Once you finish sharing your ideas, then become a child again. Yeah, really simple. So developing a beautiful friendship with the self. And not just with myself now, but who is making friends with whom? You know, when you all know about the example of Michelangelo, right? When he started cutting the stone, the image is already inside the stone. So he was just cutting everything else away that was not that image. And so inside all of us, there's a little deity. There's a divine human being inside us. And life is chipping away everything that is not this divine human being. Even though we have this package of a human that doesn't feel very divine, inside is a divine being. And it's that divine being that is making friends with this imperfect being. And this friendship is a very sweet friendship. It's like a big brother, small sister relationship. And so I have to start to make friends with my divinity. I can't ignore my conscience, because my divinity will speak through my conscience, and I can't ignore my values. What are my values? And I'm not just talking about material values or values of your ideas and opinions, because everybody has ideas and opinions. So what? They're not worth any pennies. What I'm talking about is, what do I value? I value peace. If I value peace, I'll make the effort to be patient. If I value love in human interaction, I will make the effort to be tolerant. If I value humility, I will keep somebody else in front, give somebody else a chance. So I have to examine my value system. Are they based on material gain? Or are they really very close to the qualities of the soul? Because on the basis of that value system, then you make friends with yourself. Because if you don't have a value system, on what basis are you sustaining a friendship? Instead, you just try to control the other person. You push them down if they don't listen to you. You give them reward if they listen to you. You indulge them. You don't listen to them. You know, it's an abusive relationship you have with yourself then. It's not a valuable relationship you have with yourself. So at some very deep level, we do have to examine our value systems very deeply. What do I really value inside? And what am I sustaining inside? How am I sustaining that value? So I'm going to stop there because it's already 9:20. And I'm just wondering if anyone has anything they'd like to share or any questions at this stage. If you're speaking, you'll have to unmute your mic.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
I am Sandra. Thanks a lot. It's lovely the image that you mentioned about the baby when he born and he is trust in the world and he is no worry about this excellent this image. I love it. And then the suggestions as well, as you mentioned, like write down a diary, like as well in the evening when you go to sleep, you close the scene and the day after start a new scene. This is lovely. Thanks a lot for your talks, and it was really, really good. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandra. Anyone else?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I am Ragini. Now, as you said, we should shut down everything when we go to bed. But the more it's human nature, I mean, how to do it, the more you want to shut down, the more thoughts start coming. I want to just close one thing and various thoughts start coming in the mind. So, how to remove the thoughts and sleep peacefully? That is what I want to understand.
Okay, see, you need to prepare yourself before bed, especially because, you know, a lot of how we sleep at night is determined by how we are in the day. Often in the day, we are not self-aware. So we pick up a lot of rubbish. And then nighttime, when we're on our own, all that rubbish floods us. Because we've lived our day in ignorance. So you can't just try to sleep well if you don't start to clean up your daytime. You have to start pacing yourself in the day. Balance is important in everything. You need balance because balance will sustain bliss. Now, let's say if I've had a really, really busy day from morning to evening. What I do at night, of course, I'll write, I'll just let it go, I'll write, but then I'll soak my feet in hot water. I'll go for a little walk. I'll do something so I start to relax physically. Because physical relaxation helps with mental relaxation. And you can't just keep trying to hammer your mind to stop thinking if your body is wound up because you've done so much in the day. You know how much energy talking takes up? And we talk too much in the day. And often the more we talk, it's waste what we talk in the day. And so then what happens is when you speak so much waste in the day, at night, all that wastage starts troubling you. So you have to start cleaning up waste in your life. Then it becomes easier to stay relaxed whilst you do things. Because you're not having to carry a burden of your own waste. So, you know, it's just being kind to understand that this body has a limit. So let me give it the love it needs to relax. Let me give myself a little foot massage. Let me lie down in the bath a little bit. Let me read something completely different, something refreshing. Many people, when they're tired, they come home and they switch on the television. And they put more and more rubbish into their heads. So I think that what's important for good sleep is the preparation. Now, of course, we say this, but there are often, it's not about the sleep, there's something that's stressing us out. Maybe we're taking sorrow in a relationship. Maybe we don't get on with somebody, but if you're honest with yourself, you'll see there's something that's stressing you out. And whatever it is that's stressing you out, you have to just come to terms with it. It is not going to change. So don't stress about it. Everything has its own time for change. Everything. And me thinking about something is not going to make it hurry up and change. So, I think just some honesty with the self, that will help to start relax things. Writing, enjoying some good time out, just getting the body to relax will help you sleep properly. But prepare yourself. You'll need a good hour to prepare yourself to unwind. Sometimes it takes me 1 hour to unwind before I can sleep. It's the truth. So you can't just switch off like this. You have to let the whole body relax. You have to talk your legs relax, your knees relax, your thigh relax, everything just relax. So there's another question that's come in. It says, what if I feel loneliness because I've had a great loss and lots of worries? How to manage that?
Okay, thank you.
When you've experienced, I think there's two separate things. Loss has to be addressed, because I don't know in your case what it is, whether it's you've lost something material or you've lost a person that you love. But you can't just, I think previously in society, there were attitudes that, oh, hurry up and get over it. 3 months, you're still grieving, you still feel like you're losing it. But actually, you need to surrender to a feeling of loss. I'm not saying from a safe place. You can't do this without actually having a practice of meditation. You will never be able to heal from loss if you don't have a practice of meditation. Because what meditation does is it creates an anchor of security, of peace inside. Peace and self-love. And from that place, then if a feeling of loss comes like a black cloud, you can just let it come. Feel it. Give it the vibrations of your accumulated peace and love and let it go. Don't fight it. Never fight loss. Because if you fight loss or you deny your loss, you will worry. It will create more conflict inside. So it's really important that we don't go into any kind of denial. Sometimes it's not easy to accept loss immediately. It's like you have to let it out of your body as well, especially if you've been close to somebody and somebody you love, you've lost. You've shared memories together, you've shared a life together. And sometimes you just need to remember good times and let that loss pass through. But never to get into any conflict with a feeling of loss. That's very important, because it's a feeling, and any feeling is always like a cloud. It's transient. It will not last forever. And sometimes when we feel a loss, when we indulge it too much, and we wallow in it, and then how am I ever going to live my life again? How is it ever going to be possible again? We do more damage to ourselves. So accept the feeling of loss, but don't think about the loss. That's the key here. And this is where I think God plays a very, very important role. Because you have to sit with someone you feel safe with. And I know for me, that relationship is the relationship with the Supreme. Whenever something comes up, I just sit very quietly in the lap of my Supreme Mother. And I just feel what's happening. I just let this cloud come through. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not questioning it. I'm not making a story out of it. I'm just letting it be as it is now. And that's important. And the more that you surrender in this way, the quicker it will pass. And you will regain your sense again. Because you know what the ego does? The ego will always feed off sorrow and hurt. Because that's how the ego survives. The ego makes you believe that something temporary is something real. And it's not true. I asked myself the question, am I afraid of dying? Ask yourself that question. Are you afraid of dying? Because if you're not afraid of dying, you won't be afraid of living. You'll know how to move through these transient losses when you faced your ultimate loss, which is the loss of your body. It's quite a powerful thing. You know, I'll tell you a story. We had a contact in Alaska, way, up north, many, many years ago, and she'd come to Oxford and she was carrying a walking stick. And we asked her one morning after morning class to share her story. And when she shared her story, she told us how she arrived at this state of carrying a walking stick. And she said, I was coming out of my house one day and going to my car. And somebody came from behind me and stabbed her 7 times here in her neck area. And she woke up in hospital. Of course, she couldn't move from neck down. And of course, it was like complete shock. One moment she's standing, the next moment she's in hospital, can't move. So she went into like shock and then denial, like she couldn't believe this is what's happened, and then anger. And of course, the doctors said to her, we don't know if you're going to walk again, but you do need to go through rehabilitation and physiotherapy. But physiotherapy wasn't working. It wasn't having an impact on her body. So then the doctors began counseling, and a very special kind of counseling. They used to say to her, imagine, bring into your mind somebody you feel safe with. Now with that person, go back to that scene when you were unlocking your car door. At first, she couldn't even go back to that scene. It was too painful. But because she had this person and she has a relationship with God and she brought God in, she felt safe. In the safety of that, she could go back and revisit that memory. Eventually, they kept taking her back to revisit that memory until all fear left her. So that when she went back to that memory did not trigger any more fear. So this is very important. When we have God in our lives, we use this company to revisit memories that come. And that helps neutralize it. So we finish the fear associated with it. But then the second thing that started to happen was that a chief of a local Indian tribe came to see her in hospital. And he said to her, I want you to write down every day 10 things that you appreciate about your life. Every day, write a diary. And I'll come back in 1 month. And of course, in the first couple of days, she found it very difficult because she was struggling with all this. How can I appreciate when I'm going through all this, this kind of self-absorption that can happen when you're in pain. And she nevertheless forced herself and continued. And it was incredible because after 2 weeks of starting to write 10 things she appreciated about herself, the physiotherapy started working. The cells in her body started responding to the treatment. And after 3 months, she took her first step. Because appreciation starts to open up your whole molecular system, your whole cellular system. It opens up your heart. takes you beyond the level of superficial thoughts and ideas and opinions to a deep place of feeling good. And immediately, the moment that she shifted into an appreciative mindset, the treatment started working on her. And 8 months later, she could start walking with a stick, but she could walk and she had her life back. So why am I telling you this story? Because we can lose a lot in our lives. You can lose the function of your body, you can lose a relationship. But two things are so important: God's company, and the safety of God's company, so that if any memories come up, you just give them a lot of love and just let the fear disappear. And secondly, the habit of appreciating what you already have. That will finish all worries. It'll make you content and satisfied. When something is pressurizing us, it's because we've created too many thoughts about it. Nothing from outside actually pressurizes us. It's how we think about it that pressurizes us. So if I find myself thinking too much about something, I stop. Because you're adding that load to your mind. And if that thing is not going to change, thinking about it is not going to help it to change. Really, you have to take your mind, distract that child to something else. Yeah, because too many thoughts about anything and you will experience pressure. And then the last question is, who creates the ego? I think the ego is the gap filler. It fills the gap when we lack self-respect. Yeah. The ego has befriended us for a long time because we don't work with self-respect. And the ego is the alter I, the other I that takes support from everything else outside. When we lack our sense of self-awareness and self-respect inside, that lack of self-awareness gives birth to the ego. Because the ego is very much I suppose an illusory sense of self. It's like an alter ego pedestal I create for me to feel secure. But this pedestal is not very stable. It's not grounded in my self-awareness. So I can have ego about many things: ego about my ideas, ego about my personality, ego about my opinions, ego about who cares? But egos are the source of conflict. Egos is what separates us. And so, whenever you feel insecure, it means you're standing next to your ego in that moment. You're not standing in a place of self-awareness. There's something you're taking support from that's very limited. Renunciation is a very deep thing. And it's part of a spiritual journey. And you might renounce big things like, changing your diet or changing your house or starting a meditation practice. But more subtle renunciation is the renunciation of your own ideas and opinions. Because the ego follows us. Ego seeks security even from this. And that the only self-respect and self-awareness I have is that I'm a child of God. Can I feel strong in this self-awareness? I am a child of God.
Ilesha, good afternoon. My name is Eric. Sorry to interrupt your beautiful speech. I would like to come back to this idea of the baby. I'm really interested by your idea of writing something every night. I'm still thinking I could be a child, but the difference I feel is that I interact with people when the child was alone, when he was born. And this interaction, this influence of your job, your family, the trends, the fashion, is around us. And I can say I think a lot about this question, that I spend hours on a computer, I spend hours on my smartphone, and I try to disconnect as soon as I can. But if I'm working in a team, and I give you an example, my director is sending me an email at midnight, I'm in a position not to answer because I'm staff, I'm not at risk. So that's where I feel we touch the question of the pyramid of Maslow, of this instinct of surviving and security. And of course, I will not answer, but I will see all my colleagues who will answer in a minute, not 15 minutes later, in a minute, because it's a kind of world in insecurity about your contract to be renewed and paying your rent. And so I'm asking you, what's your opinion about it? Because I feel there is a lot of fear and insecurity that is pushing me, and not only me, I feel, about this question that we are in condition, we are influenced by what is surrounding us, and it's your job, it's paying your rent, it's your wife, it's your daughter, it's your father, it could be at school for a student, but that's where you see you are not alone, you are not a baby. So I'm kind of provoking you on that, because I feel when my daughter was 10 and she went for the first examination and she was nervous, and I told her, don't worry, if it's okay, you pass it. If it's not okay, you will repeat it. She was not a baby when she was doing that examination, and I didn't find a way trying to relax her. She was nervous. She was not the baby she was when she was born on that occasion. And I guess I was the same when I was young. And the same thing when you go for an interview for a job, or you are working and you are in tension for something, you don't want to be wrong. Thank you, Ilesha.
Thank you, Eric. I think that, all of this, what you're talking about, is stuff that we've learned along the way. Because what's interesting is that when a baby is born, it's actually completely self-aware. And it has no sense of distinction between me and you. But what that starts to turn into when it gets older is self-consciousness. Because that natural feeling of being self-aware that it was so spontaneously expressing from, suddenly when it gets told off by a parent, or something happens at school, it gets hurt or something, suddenly an experience from the outside starts to make it conscious. And usually all the influences around us are making us conscious of ourselves, not as spiritual beings, but as physical beings. You're black, you're white, you can't talk to this person, you're from this family, you're from this position, you're from this role, you're expected to follow this. So all this wall of self-consciousness that's built up around us it's like suddenly finding yourself again. I thought you knew yourself and you were comfortable in your purity and goodness, and suddenly it's like you suddenly don't know yourself, because it's like you have to know yourself from the outside, because that's how the world is behaving with you. So when I say keep the consciousness of the baby, it's cultivating the awareness of my eternity, my sense of self that is beyond my job, my rent, my wife, my child. It's a very deep and pure sense of self. And I can keep that alive as I do my day-to-day work. I don't need to let the facade destroy that sense of trust and that sense of purity and that sense of goodness inside. And somehow, because nobody's ever told us you're a soul or this is who you are, we've just been made to believe this is what you are. You are a body, you have to live this role, you have to 9.5 job, you have to do this, you have to do this. And so we buy into that mindset. And of course, then we operate our whole life to support that mindset. And yet, even if my house is taken away from me, I can get another house. People will come and go in my life. Everything in my life is impermanent right now. Everything. And so what I find in the practice of meditation is that it takes me back into a place of permanency inside myself. And you know, the beautiful thing is that when you actually sustain this energy in everything you do, people start to trust you and they respect you even more. Because karmically, if you act or shoot from the hip by acting from a place of insecurity or trying to please somebody or trying to fulfill expectations, the outcome is that you will always end up in trouble. You will lose something. People will not respect you. But if you are to hold yourself in your vibration, and then yes, communicate when you feel it's appropriate, and people will start to adjust to you. They will start to respect your energy because they're receiving something from you. If you act from insecurity, you will be used and abused. That's a classical karmic loop I've seen again and again and again. That's why when people come to me and say, what's a right decision? I said, there's no such thing as a right decision. You have to be right when you're making a decision, which means you really have to be inside in your energy of eternity, in your energy of being permanent, secure, that, you know what, even if this thing leaves me, I'm not going to let go of my values. And when you keep yourself above, keep your dignity above everything, life will respond to that. You know, if you drop your frequency of energy, then life also drops its frequency of energy around you. Many people chase money because they want to get rich, but the more they keep chasing money, the more it eludes them. So, you know, it's similar. It's like if you want resources to come to you, you have to elevate your energy. And it's almost like you have to trust universe. You are part of something much, much bigger than this small little unit that we've created for ourselves that we call family. You are part of a much bigger fabric. And you have to trust that fabric wants to see you at your best. God wants to see you at your best. Life wants to bring the best out of you. But do I want to hold on to what is the best in me? Or do I just, because everybody else is doing it, just follow and do the same? So it's a deep commitment to sustaining a level of energy. And, you know, when we come into action, we need to be grounded. That's why you can't, morning meditation is essential. It's absolutely essential to ground yourself with. Because then throughout the whole day, your consciousness won't get absorbed or trapped in the action that you do. Because you fed yourself in the morning. So the baby doesn't lose itself in the relationships. It doesn't lose itself in the job. It retains its energy whilst it's doing everything. That's really important. So I hope it's gone some way to answering your question, but it's a big aspect of self-care and of re-identifying oneself beyond my material markers. You know, I left university. I left Oxford University. I was given an unconditional offer. My family told me I was crazy. If you've ever grown up in an Indian family, you'll know how much emphasis they place on education. Parents sacrifice their lives for their children's education. And I was increasingly getting disinterested, even though I wanted to be a lawyer. I was studying law. And one day I just woke up and it was very clear for me, I have to leave university today. I walked into the dean's office and I left. And of course, I came back home. He'd called my mother, but I didn't want to speak to her. I went and spoke to my father. And I just said to my father, I said, Dad, I need to talk to you. And he took me into the garden. And we sat down and I said, please just listen to me. And I said, I've left university. It felt right today. I don't know what my future is, but I feel that whatever I'm going to do, it'll be okay. And I just started to talk from my heart. And bless his heart, he was listening. And as he was listening, after about half an hour, I stopped and I looked at him. And he looked at me and he said to me, the main thing is your happiness. If you make any choices towards your happiness, I will support you. You cannot imagine the relief I felt in that moment. He didn't give me any temporary marker. Oh, we've spent so much money on your education. How can you just leave university like that? Or if you don't get a job, if you don't get qualifications, how are you going to get a job? How are you going to live in life? None of that. He brought me right back down to the reality of life, which is happiness. And that in that moment, it just made me totally fearless. It doesn't matter what life will bring me. I know if I keep my happiness alive, I'll be able to face anything.
Thank you, Ilesha. You are pushing me to, I'm thinking now about my daughter, because actually I feel like your father. I mean, she's 22.
Just be brief because we need to finish soon. Sorry, go ahead, finish.
And I feel at the moment she's just looking at the career and the money. And I don't find, I told her it's not about money, it's not about the position, but she's in that. So I don't know. But it's also, she's 22, so she's adult, and it's also her life.
Yeah.
And maybe as you did one day, she will tell me, I stop.
Yeah, everybody has their own learning curve. And the only thing, when somebody gets to 22, you become a friend, a wise guide on the side. And the only way is just to ask some really good questions that make them think. You know, what makes you deeply happy? So all the best for your daughter and for you.
Thank you very much, Gopi, for these very beautiful insights and really great answers for the questions. And so maybe there will be another opportunity as well to have you with the people in Italy. So thank you very much. And thanks to everyone as well for being present, for your participation. This talk has been recorded, so it'll be available to everyone. Maybe we'll conclude with just a moment of silence together.